Oh, really good for a couple of reasons. And with that, we'll bring in Don Taylor of Donnie and Dolly. Don, how are you today? Thank you for joining us.
Good. Everything good? You guys can hear me? Everything
Yes.
working? Good.
Absolutely. Quads was real worried about you connecting on that link here. I said, don't worry about it, Quads.
Dollywall told us you're not very good with technology, so we were excited that you got in.
Yeah, and he is. Like, please give me a break. You know, it's funny. I was contemplating. I often wear a toque, and I was contemplating. Should I wear a toque or not? I might be a little disrespectful if I do. And then Quads, I'm looking at you. You got the toque on, looking good. I feel bad about my fashion choice now. People don't want to see this head. Come on.
Yeah, Quads has been hearing it in the chat about the bangs that he's been rocking. So I've noticed the toque has come out to help him here a little bit. So it
looks good. Very Canadian. Very Canadian. No problem.
Thank you.
Donnie, let's get started here with the Vancouver Canucks. Where to start, really? There's a lot going on. I think the coach is going to be an interesting spot tonight. Are you looking at Bruce Boudreau's future here just from tonight's game? Are we at that point now?
I hope not, in part because I like the guy and I think he's a very good coach, at least during the regular season. And certainly we harken back to last year, it looked like he was pretty good. And I say I hope not because I know the history of this organization. If they make a deal, or probably if they make a move, do they have somebody in mind? Like really? I mean, it's one thing to let somebody go, but you better have a damn good replacement. Especially when you're dealing with people. I don't care how old you are. There's been a lot of suffering when you're dealing with people who are really frustrated right now. So I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent right here. But this particular scenario reminds me of the late 90s when Brian Burke took over, came back to the Canucks for a second time, and was the general manager of the Canucks, and Mike Keenan was head coach. And it was clear nothing was going to work between the two. And Brian made a move. But the person he made a move for was in big time demand, and that was Mark Crawford. If the Canucks hadn't moved on Mark Crawford, somebody else would have. He was a very hot commodity at the time. Team Canada coach, Stanley Cup winning coach with Colorado. Is that guy out there right now? Are people going all out to go to hire Rick Tocchet? Maybe they are. I'm not really sure, but I only think you make a move if you know that the guy you're going to bring in will be gone. That somebody that you want will be gone if you don't make that move. Now, I'm not so sure that guy's out there.
Donnie, what would you suggest for the Canucks at this point? Because we've thrown around the word rebuild. We've thrown around the word, okay, they can make a comeback. They can do all this sort of stuff. But where do the Canucks go from here? Like, if you're in charge, what's your first move?
Well, I've gone on and on, back at the Funny Station and even here before Alvin and Rutherford got to Vancouver. I'm all for a rebuild in large part because, as I go old man again, going back to 1970, they've never really committed to a full rebuild the way a lot of teams have, like the Kings have, and the team that's coming in tonight. They got rid of a lot of people, not got rid of, but they made the most of assets that were near and dear to the hearts of a lot of LA Kings fans. And they decided to focus on a rebuild. And, the Canucks, at least, the last two eras have never done that. And I just would like to see, at my age, something different being done. And that to me is a rebuild. I think this market would accept that in a heartbeat, especially when it looks at a team like the Kings or the Red Wings. But let's focus on the Kings because they're in town tonight. They're 10 points ahead of the Canucks. They made the playoffs last year in the midst of what is supposed to be a rebuild. That's pretty good. And they've got players waiting in the wings to join this organization, to join the big team. That's pretty impressive. And the Canucks have never had a focus like that. And it's I think pretty disappointing for a lot of people. That this new group comes in and it just seems the exact same. So I'm all for a rebuild. I'm okay with it. And I think Canuck fans, by and large, having seen what other teams have done, with rebuilds, with great young players. There's great young players in the Canucks organization, but it's just frustrating to not have that here ever.
I'm curious to get your thoughts on moving into a rebuild. We've heard Bo Horvat and the Columbus Blue Jackets kind of in rumors over the past couple days. Heard
Yeah.
Frank Cervelli on our show, Elliot Friedman as well. With that, is that enough to signal a rebuild, or because he's a UFA after this year, is it Bo and then something and then something and then hey, we're actually in a rebuild? Like, because I feel like there might be a way for the Canucks to, take another one of these easy way outs where they just trade Bo Horvat and then try and just quick retool, right? Like, we want to
Yeah.
rebuild. We want to see his team build something up with
Yeah.
potentially the young players
Donovan
of Pettersson and Hughes. But do you need more than Horvat, or is that just like, does that worry you that might be the only thing they end up doing here?
Well, maybe the only thing they can do because of the JT Miller deal. That has hamstrung from the outside looking in, seems to have hamstrung them a whole lot, because there was a piece that people thought, okay, you can get a 99-point player, a little bit older, you can get something for him, and it just didn't happen. They decided to re-sign him, for 7 years plus this season. So that makes it a little bit difficult. But I think at this point, if you've got the Bo Horvat chip to play, and if indeed they see what they have on the ice, which isn't that good right now, maybe they do focus on a rebuild. It's just too bad they made that move. Now, having said that, you hear all this stuff lately, this week anyway, about Erik Karlsson moving. Well, if he moves on from San Jose with all that time and money left, that's going to be frustrating for Canucks fans, because they will say, well, what about if San Jose can move Karlsson, and I know they have to eat some of the salary. If they can move Karlsson, can't you move JT Miller? So just get a focus and move on from there.
What's your take on the goaltending situation right now? Like, Thatcher Demko struggled out of the gate. He gets the start tonight, but we've basically seen him and Spencer Martin splitting starts. Like, what do you make of this situation right now?
What does anybody make? I mean, nobody saw this coming. Of all the things to go wrong, the one thing you thought they had right was the goaltending situation. Demko as a top 5, top 6 goaltender in the league, maybe a Vezina candidate, which there were whispers of last year, and then Spencer Martin, a solid backup. But right now, there's that question of, well, do you ride Martin? I know Demko's starting tonight, from my understanding. Do you ride Martin while he's winning, especially if you're Boudreau and you're worried about your job? What do you do? I think what you do is, if Demko is indeed healthy, and from all indications he is, despite the offseason surgery, which we don't know a whole lot about, I guess you just got to try to see if he and Ian Clark can work their way out of this, because that's the only solution I find right now. I can think of right now.
How big of, and we kind of touched on it in the opening here, but we said bright lights Van City tonight because it's the only NHL game on the docket. You're going to see Thatcher Demko be there. I mean, like we said, maybe not everyone's going to tune in because everyone on the east side is going to be all asleep by 10 o'clock when the game starts here, but they'll see it in the highlight shows, right? Like, tonight feels like there's actually more pressure than maybe we're thinking of on Demko for tonight's start.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then, playing at home after what happened on the road, just what's happened this whole season. Yeah, there's some pressure there. There's a couple of days between games, which builds up, builds up the hype or non-hype for a game. They're wearing their retros tonight. Yeah, there'll be some heat on them. You're an NHL goalie, you should be able to handle that. And look, a lot of times, and you see this at all levels of sports, where sometimes when there's heat on somebody, when you don't expect them to play well, that's when they come up big. So we'll see what happens tonight.
Donnie, are you upset about it as we are? That Kyle Burrows looks like he's getting out of the lineup tonight in place of Riley Stillman.
I don't know if you watched our show today, but we were pretty upset. And I know you watch every day. Maybe you missed today, but it was. I don't get how he plays over 7 minutes in the third period in Buffalo and is real noticeable as somewhat of a rock out there. Obviously a fan favorite. Now that means nothing to Alvin and Rutherford. I understand that, local kid, but he's a warrior. And I don't think they have enough of those guys out there. He stands up for his teammates. He pisses off the opposition left and right. He's smart and simple with the puck. I'm trying to figure out, other than being undersized, maybe a little bit, what exactly is he not doing that Riley Stillman has? And, people could talk about righty lefty, but there was a practice not that long ago where he did practice on the left side, and everybody said, "Oh, he's played there before." And if you ask him, he'll tell you. I'm sure he wants to be in the lineup tonight, on the left side, right side, whatever the case may be. I'm just trying to figure out what they don't see. And again, other than maybe size, I can't figure it out. And the other thing, guys, I wonder if this is at play here. I get the sense that Bruce Boudreau loves minor leaguers, loves guys that have spent a lot of time in the minor leagues, and maybe Alvin and Rutherford, think to themselves, well, there's a reason the guy's been in the minor leagues for a long time. Boudreau spent a lot of time in the minor leagues, so I think he has a soft spot in his heart for those guys. But in this case, I think it's justified. I'm trying to figure out what exactly Burrows doesn't do. Is he Bobby Orr? No, but he's pretty good. Certainly good enough to be a third pairing NHL defenseman.
I think that's the way we look at it. And we talked about this, I think, on yesterday's show. Burrows feels like the blueprint player of, hey, yeah, maybe they're not a great player, but those are the type of guys you want to watch if your team's in a rebuild, right? Like, you'd like to have a couple forwards that play like Kyle Burrows does if this team does commit to a rebuild. You'd like to see guys like Luke Shen. You'd like to see guys like even Curtis Lazard, Dakota Joshua, like guys that are going to make things exciting a little bit moving forward here. And I think we talked about it just before you came on here, Donnie, but with Stillman, I don't know. The way I'm looking at it is is he playing because the general manager made a trade for him and now this guy needs to play because he talked about him being a bottom pairing guy? That's the only thing. Like, when throwing it around, that's the only thing we can think why he's in the lineup instead of Burrows.
Well, you mentioned all those players. The other thing about those guys is they don't cost much. So when you're rebuilding and you've got cap considerations, those are the kind of guys you want in the lineup. And I think too, when you're talking about rebuilding, and I understand that the Canucks aren't there yet, but can you imagine like the example, a guy like Burrows or Lazar, where they bounced around and they're hanging in there, they're great personalities, just the example that those guys would set. I mean, the Stars set a good example, but a lot of times what a JT Miller does or any great player in the NHL, most players can't relate to that, but they can relate to working your ass off and sticking around, having getting a National Hockey League job and doing what it takes to be a good pro. And I think those guys are like that. I'm all for what you just said there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, another week. We'll see what happens next week. And Donnie, every day we get the double Donnie and Dolly show. We pick it up at 12 because we start going at 1 o'clock. Quads every day. It's on the TV when we get in there. So keep doing what you guys are doing. We love it. Everybody in BC is loving what you guys are doing. So super happy to see you and Dolly having so much success here.
Well, also keep in mind that I'm also partial to your show. Nothing against you, Chris, but Quads is from North Burnaby, the greatest place on earth. There is that, and also you guys know this too, and we try to give you as much credit as possible. We steal a lot of your stuff, just so you know. We use a lot of your information.
Too.
You guys are doing a great job. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Quads is giving me crap because we do our show. We do a city to a city. I picked Burnaby today, and he's like, "It's got to be North Burnaby." I don't know.
And someone in the chat, before we let you go, Tony, someone in the chat asked if you could specify the difference between North Burnaby and South Burnaby, because I specified it for people, and they said, "What's the difference?" I've got a few things in mind, but I want to hear your take on it.
Well, if we're talking in geography, we're talking north of Highway 1. So there's that. And also, I think I don't want to get myself in trouble with people from South Burnaby, but North Burnaby's got the lake, it's got the mountain, it's beautiful. Confederation Park, all the nice restaurants on Hastings. Come on, I mean, I'm sorry. Compared to Metrotown, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Again, I don't want to upset anybody, and obviously, you and we're partial to our hometown. That's the way it goes, and it's North Burnaby. And I used to do the show with Moj. He claimed there was no such thing as North Burnaby and South Burnaby. It was just Burnaby. I grew up there. I beg to differ. So there's that. And you know what? People from South Burnaby, feel free to rip us. That's just fine.
All right. I grew up in South Nanaimo, and I remember those North Nanaimo folk. They sound like you two here. All right, Don. Appreciate you joining us, man. We'll do it again.
Anytime, guys. All the best.
There he is. Don Taylor.